Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into our talks on Judgment Day with part 4. And in this one, we come to the end of the 24-hour countdown to Judgment. And it's in this moment where we'll also take a deeper dive into the true intentions of Uranos and how he's always believed that anything that is not the machine is excess deviation. And on top of that, we also witness the last minutes of the hour of Magneto. So with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one we head back to Earth in New York, right in front of the X-Men's treehouse. And at this point, the human protesters, they are turned up. The treehouse is on fire, somebody got a rifle, and they are on edge at this point because on top of their frustrations with mutant resurrection, time's almost up for the countdown to Judgment. And for a moment, Captain America is trying to calm everyone down, and he's looking into everyone's phone who got their phone pointed at him, telling the world that we're all gonna live. But collectively, the world is just saying, that noise, Captain America, you full of shit. And right away, the protesters, they just serve him that fade. But just after this, we then make our way over to Cersei, who at this point is explaining her plan to Tony, which is to get Eros to connect to the machine in order to get the whole world to be together for just long enough to pass. But as it turns out, Eros, he's not with this plan. Because for him, ever since he was killed in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 5 Issue 6, in an attempt to stop the resurrection of Thanos, we had later discovered his integration with the machine. And from the time of his resurrection up until recently, he was locked away in the exclusion with plenty of time to watch and think. And he believes that he has a better idea because if he just connects to the machine and uses his powers, that's likely going to give him an automatic fail, which will then lead to the machine and the rest of the world likely getting the same. And with hearing this, Cersei doesn't want to take the chance because it's literally too much at stake. And since they don't have the time to go back and forth about it, Eros just tells them that they gotta get started now. And just after this, we're shown a series of events through the perspective of the progenitor, and we see in these different cases some get the thumbs up, some get the thumbs down, and others are just observed. And through the course of this, we see Tom again, who got beat up for just looking too Eastern European. But Tom gets the thumbs down for failing to see the irony in all of this. And we've seen a number of occasions for Tom where he would agree with either side and just nod along without having a personal stance on the whole situation. And just after Tom, we then see Mayor Luke Cage, who's asked a question by a member of the press who's really the progenitor in disguise. And with doing this, he asks Mayor Cage, how would you judge your performance? To where then Mayor Cage just deflects, saying ask me tomorrow. And right away, Mayor Cage fails because he deflects like any other political figure would. And after him, the progenitor then goes to Thor, who's way into orbit fighting a member of the Hex, and the progenitor says that the inscription on Thor's hammer says that he's worthy, so he must be. But it's too bad that this doesn't apply to everyone who has ever lifted Mjolnir, which sucks for Cap. But from here, we see the progenitor watching Eros as he moves forward with his plan, which at this point has Eros having a discussion with Sebastian Shaw, which is him opening communication to the mutants. And next we see the progenitor make an appearance to Kamala Khan in the form of Captain Marvel, while giving Kamala the opportunity to get her family somewhere safe, but Kamala says no, and for that reason she gets a thumbs up. And after this, next we go to Katrina, who pretty much gets a thumbs down for not leaving a tip. Come on, Katrina, do better. And after this, we then head over to Charles Xavier, and I kinda got mixed feelings about how Charles is judged here, because the progenitor approaches Charles under the guise that he's actually his son Legion. And in this moment, while Charles is engaging in psychic warfare with the Eternals, Charles ignores his son who's asking for a moment to talk, and for that reason he fails. And on one hand, I'm kinda like, you know what, it's kinda the end of the world here. So in that lane, I'd give Charles a pass, but on the other hand, Charles has had many other opportunities to be a better father. And in a way, I believe his judgment is more about that. And next we go to Kamali, Arjun's widow, who had lost her husband when Sign was resurrected, but in her case, this is more of an observation, as a progenitor appears in her room and then leaves shortly after, in fear of Kamali judging him. And just after this, we then see Eros, who at this point is in Wakanda, but he's been traveling around and talking to different leaders about what those leaders want to talk about. But even more importantly, he listens. And then from here we see Brandy Selby, the new Star Brand. She passes from how well she continues to fight, and Daniela from Sao Paulo, she also passes because after lying to her mother and not going home to her, she had then changed her mind to be with her mother in what may be their final hour. And then after this, we got Victor Von Doom, which was a judgment that I was hoping to see. And more or less how it plays out, Victor Von Doom passes himself, and the progenitor just concurs. And really, I couldn't see that playing out any other way. But moving along, Jada, who had lost her child, she gets a thumbs up because she understands the world's frustration and she recognizes that the method of execution with the fighting and the hatred isn't right. And then for Daredevil, the progenitor shows up to him on a cross with a crown full of thorns and a thumbs down. Because for Matt Murdock, his mission as the Daredevil is to keep the streets of Hell's Kitchen from literally becoming hell. And even with him having his own moral code, Matt Murdock has broken his own code time and time again. And when he receives this judgment, a tear drops below that mask, but then shortly after, he continues with business as usual. And really, out of all these judgments, to me, Daredevil's, it kinda hits different. Cause for the longest time, he's been the only God can judge me type. And now that that's happened, he's still like, I'ma keep doing it. And it seems very true to his character. And then next we go to Miles Morales, who gets a thumbs up from the progenitor, who appears to Miles in the form of Peter Parker Spider-Man. And in return, Miles just gives him a thumbs up back. And then the last that we see out of this group is Kenta, who still hasn't done his homework, but the progenitor passes on judging him because he's just a child, which really shows us that the children out of the rest of the world, their judgment is pretty much banking on all the adults. And I guess that's a thing for all the children except for Brandy Selby, who practically is still a baby whose age was sped up because she still was judged. So I guess with us seeing this, we're given an example between both Brandy and Kenta, that the children are judged according to their circumstance, I guess? I don't know. But after this, we then go back to Eros, where we find him speaking to the world leaders, telling them that he's found a solution, which in a nutshell is having the mutants and the Eternals make larger contributions to the world and essentially turn it into a paradise. Because the mutants have offered some of their medicines and their technologies to the world, but they have so much more to offer beyond that. And in the case of the Eternals, recently the world has seen the worst that the Eternals can offer, and Eros intrigues the audience by telling them that if they all come to an agreement, then the world can have access to celestial tech. But with Eros saying this, we gotta point out one thing, because even though Eros has been added to the machine, he can't speak for all the Eternals. He's not the Prime Eternal, because as it stands, Druig still holds that spot. And with the way that he's been handling things, it's totally ruining the come together movement, which from here puts into motion a plan to correct that. But it heavily relies on them catching Druig slipping, which in a way is almost guaranteed because nearly every decision we've seen Druig make, it's been either to prove something or just out of fear. And when we head back over to the exclusion, we find Druig on the same thing, because as he prepares to bring everyone into the Unimind, including the Hex, for a massive attack, he's doing this in hopes of taking out the mutants while they're at their weakest, but also as a huge show of faith for the progenitor to give him a thumbs up. But of course, with Druig not being sure of himself as a leader, he mentions this plan in front of Uranos, almost as if he wants his counsel/approval again. And more or less Uranos is like, yeah, sounds like a good idea, but you could let me out again and let me handle it. But Druig is like, nope, not that desperate, and he moves forward after getting that passive approval by Uranos. But then it's here where we see Druig release the Unimind, with everyone connected, including the Hex. But then Cersei, Thena, Makari, and Ajax, they come and they merge with the Unimind as well. And initially Druig, he believes that this is Cersei and the others switching from the losing team and joining with him. But then it's here where we find out that the sabotage mission of Icarus and Gilgamesh, it isn't over yet. Because deep inside the machine, they've taken down the firewalls and they allow the mutants to join the Unimind, which is nuts. And remember, the Unimind is more than just a weapon, because first and foremost, it's the Eternals' democracy, and right away they put that to use by calling for an election for the new Prime Eternal. And the X-Men waste no time by voting for Eros, and right away Druig recognizes that he's gonna lose, because numbers-wise the mutants clearly have the majority vote, and Druig has to act quick and do something before he loses his position as Eternal Prime. And initially Druig tries to counter what's been done, because we've seen him rig an election before, back when Thanos became the Prime Eternal. But in this moment for Druig, he doesn't have the time to swing the election back in his favor. And with just seconds left, Uranos, he's telling Druig like, you know, you could just let me out. And he tells Druig like, you gotta let me out, do it now. I'm your only chance. And with Uranos saying this, Druig folds and he lets Uranos out in hopes that Uranos could stop them, with Druig only having seconds left. But Uranos tells Druig that he doesn't plan to help him because he was such a poor leader. But effectively this plan works, and it makes Eros the new Prime Eternal, which means that he can now make good on his plans of bringing the world together. But with Druig now out of the way, the new issue is Uranos, who at this point has unleashed his armory on Earth. And really now I think is a good time, better than any, to talk about what Uranos really wants to do, because his intentions were made clear as day in the Eternals The Heretic issue 1 by Kieran Gillen. Because it was here where we were shown the perspective of Uranos in relation to the three principles, because when it came to excess deviation, he of course wanted to get rid of all deviants. Secondly, when it came to protecting the machine, he sees the machine for what it is, the infrastructure of the planet and the Eternals, nothing else. And all existence outside of the machine is a possible threat to the machine. And since the deviant is not the machine, the flower is not the machine, the mammal is not the machine, all can and should be purged. And for Uranos, after the world is secured, the galaxy is next. And in the case of the third principle, protect celestials. In their case, he just believes that they're the ones that need to be locked up. Because a god is too precious to be free. A god should be safely in a cage. So in this moment, with us seeing Uranos free in his armories, letting off all sorts of attacks across the world, from his perspective, this is him just getting started. And with seeing this chaos break out, that's why in this moment, Druig's kind of like, I messed up. But through the course of this, Iron Man makes his way to Uraco, and he tells Storm and Magneto that Uranos is about to do to Earth what he did to Uraco, so he needs them to step in. And he lets them know that they're able to use some of the old portals that Uranos had created. If they apply a huge electromagnetic charge, they can use them to get back to Earth. And so like we had seen when the Hour of Magneto began, it's no issue for Storm and Magneto to produce that electromagnetic charge to hijack one of the old armory portals. And as soon as they get here, they hit Uranos with the same attack that we'd seen them hit the plastic gorilla with in X-Men Red issue 6. But of course, Uranos, he just takes it. But by no means did they intend for this attack to deal heavy damage on Uranos, but instead they had just used it to buy time so that Tony could hack the other portals and redirect the armory's attacks to all point back at him. And even this didn't kill Uranos, it more or less just had him looking like Daffy Duck with his beak shot off. But as a result of his excessive damage, he had begun a process of telekinetically reassembling himself, which had given them the opportunity to place Uranos back in his cell. But at this point for Magneto, he's given all that he's had, and in a brief moment where he could have called for help, instead he accepts this ending for himself, because he could have had Storm sustain him a bit longer just to make it to the healing gardens. But instead he chooses for this to be the end of the road for him. But in a brief moment just before Magneto passes, the progenitor appears to him in the form of his daughter Anya, and Magneto gets the thumbs up. And just after this, we finally get the answer to the progenitor's judgment on Icarus and Circe, where Icarus gets the thumbs up and Circe gets the thumbs down, which then has Tony like, how? How did Circe get the thumbs down when she came up with a plan that potentially saved everyone? But with Circe getting this judgment, she doesn't even try to make sense of it, because she knows out of her long life that there are a number of things that she's done that could have gotten her that thumbs down. But from here, Eros, as the new Prime Eternal, he takes to the podium to speak to the progenitor, because now as Prime Eternal, he has the means to make good on the plans that he has to bring the world together. And Eros tells the progenitor that much like everyone else, he spent years wasting his potential, but within this past 24 hours, they've made plans for peace and for a better future for everyone. But for the world to truly change is not gonna all happen in a day. And the fact is, the world truly isn't out of time unless the progenitor says they are. So more or less, Eros tells the progenitor like, well, what do you say? Give us time and give us the opportunity to do and be better. But the progenitor, he responds and he tells them that if they had more time, if they had 1,000,000 years, they will still not have done enough. Because the people of this world are always like, tomorrow we'll do better, tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. And he tells them that they've never put into consideration that those tomorrows may run out. And it's here where the progenitor lets them know that that day, the day that tomorrows run out, it's today. As he gives his judgment and the world gets the thumbs down. And it's from here where the global death sentencing begins, as the progenitor makes his way to take this world out. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.